Hey everybody, welcome back to John's Firearm 705. Today I have out the Norinco Olympia 22 LR pistol, semi-automatic. Want to do a little video and show you on how I clean this particular firearm up and where I put the lubrication for it. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing we're going to want to do is take a look in there, make sure the firearm is unloaded. You can see there's nothing in the chamber. Mag well is empty. Of course, there's no magazine in there. This gun is safe and unloaded. Now that it's racked, the hammer's cocked, I'm going to go ahead and put my safety on right here. Okay, just move it to the down position. At that point, I grab it, pull down the front of the trigger guard, move the slide back all the way, lift it up, comes off. We'll set that aside for now. What I'd like to do at the first part here is I grab an old oily rag I have and I just clean up all the surfaces as best as I can right away, especially paying attention to the feed ramp in there. I also like to give it a nice wipe around the end of the muzzle there. Just give it an overall wipe down. 22 LR ammo, as you know, depending on what kind you use, can be quite dirty. Okay, then I like to grab my pistol length cleaning rod. I like to kind of poke it up through the mag well, something like that. I just kind of move it up and down a little bit just to kind of pull out any crud that might have got down inside the mag well, as well as it also cleans up good inside where the feed ramp is. Just back and forth a few times. I just take a look in there. I can see that it's all nice and clean. Clean off where the bolt face matches up there, and also where your extractor goes into the side there. I like to make sure that little groove is nice and tidy. Okay, then I grab my cleaning rod and I use one of these pointy little cleaning jags. Then I like to run a few patches through here, just dry patches. I don't put anything on them just yet. And the patches I use, I just keep old cotton t-shirts, cut them up to whatever size I need for the different various firearms, because I do a lot of cleaning and the price of patches is just so expensive that I find the old t-shirts work just fine. So I push the first one through. You can see it's pretty filthy. I just came back from the range. So yeah, I'll push maybe 3 or 4 patches through there, like I say, just dry. Until I see them coming out, you know, basically clean. Then I like to switch off to my brass brush. Run that through there a couple of times just to loosen up any carbon that might be built up inside the grooves and the lands. I have quite a few rounds through this, and yeah, the barrel, I don't know if it's getting shot out or not. It's still super true, super accurate, which is amazing because this was only a $200 pistol here in Canada before the ban came in. So then after I run the brass brush through there, I'll run a couple more patches just to push out any carbon that it dislodged. And one more for good luck. Yeah, so I'm not really seeing too much of anything on that last patch. So now I switch off. I have 2 different bore mops for my 22 pistols. One I call the clean one. I usually just run that through after all the final patches, and the bore seems pretty clean. Now you notice I didn't use any solvent on here, and I didn't push any oil through it just yet. Just because it's always kept clean. If you don't clean your firearm too often, you'll probably need to use some kind of a solvent in there to loosen up any baked on old carbon. But mine are kept pretty clean. Then I switch off to this other 22 bore brush, or bore mop rather. Now this one, I always just add a few drops of oil. This is my wet bore mop. Just add a couple of drops of oil. Then I run that through the bore a couple of times just to give it some lubricant while it's in storage till the next time it goes out. 3 passes just fine with that. Give a little look-see down the barrel there. Looks nice and shiny. And then I don't like to have too much oil in there, so usually I'll finish it off at this point with just one more 22 cal patch pushed through it with the cleaning jag. And that came out. It's a little bit dirty, so okay. Push another patch through there. Pretty much clean. One more for good luck. Yep, that's the way shit happens. As I was saying, one more for good luck. Now they're looking pretty clean. I'll just put a white one through there just to make sure I'm not getting anything else out there. And yep, we got a clean patch. So I know my barrel's good. I know it's clean. I know there's a nice thin coat of oil in there. And I open up some solvent, depending, you know, use whatever kind you got. Q-tips are always handy. Just give that a little dip in some solvent. Don't need a whole lot. And I just clean up around the face here and inside the slots where the slide rides. I'll run a little bit there, just down the feed ramp too, just to make sure there's no wax buildup. I'm using Blazer ammo currently, and it does have a wax coating on there. So I just give everything in there, the hammer, those grooves, Just all the surfaces that move around. Quick little rub down with the solvent. Okay, and then I'll just set that aside for now and let that solvent do its thing. We'll get back to that. Then I grab the slide, my oily rag again. I just wipe down all the surfaces. Paying special attention to inside here, the back ends. Those are the sides that ride up on the back of the frame. I'll make sure there's no gunk buildup in there. And also inside here, these two little slots on either side of the housing for the firing pin. Make sure they're all nice and clean. And of course, the bolt face in here, and I move over the extractor and give that all a good wipe down. And at this point, I like to pop out the firing pin on this particular firearm. So I grab my trusty little homemade block I made. To remove the firing pin on this, there's one pin, come at it from the bottom. And I'm using, what am I using here? A 1/16 punch. It's pretty easy to pop out. Mine was quite loose. There's a tiny wee little firing pin. And there's a little spring, kind of about the size that comes out of one of those big pins. So now that's all cleaned out there. Well, not cleaned out, but it's stripped down. Grab myself a pipe cleaner right there. And I'll run that through the firing pin channel. See, it kind of comes out through there. I just give it a couple back and forths. Now I'm going to go inside here with a Q-tip and some solvent. All this really does is clean out the tiny little hole where the actual firing pin protrudes out of the bolt face there. Okay, and I'll take that same Q-tip that already had solvent on it. I'll run it up inside there. Run it all inside the little grooves there where it slides up and down on the frame. And even down inside there where I put in the firing pin. Just give it all a good rub down everywhere. Paying special attention to where the bullet sits in there. You usually get quite a bit of carbon buildup in there. Okay, so now I'll set that aside and go back to the frame, let the solvent do its thing there. The frame's been sitting up there. I'll grab myself another rag, one that's not dirty. Just give all those surfaces another wipe down. Wipe out the solvent that we put on. Hopefully it's broken down any carbon buildup you might have. Again, around the muzzle too. And again, take my cleaning rod, push that microfiber rag up through the pistol, the magazine well. And just give that a few pulls back and forth, just to get that good little clean out in there, make sure there's nothing built up in there. Again, paying special attention to the little groove there where your extractor fits in, and your feed ramp, very important. Okay. With that, I'm happy that the frame is sufficiently clean, ready for reassembly. I'll take the slide, just use the clean rag again to wipe down all those surfaces that we had the solvent sitting on, inside those grooves underneath. I'll grab a fresh Q-tip, clean up inside there where the firing pin goes. Just dry up any solvent. Yeah, we're good there. We'll set that aside. And I usually will grab the firing pin and just give it a rub down with an oily rag, or if you want to use solvent and a Q-tip, whatever works for you. I just like to give it a quick little rub down. It usually isn't too filthy depending on how often you clean your firearm. I don't know why you got it out. Give it a little inspection. Because up here in Canada, you can no longer buy pistols. And I'm not really too sure where I would ever get another firing pin for this firearm. So I like to, make sure it's clean and not starting to wear down. There, it looks good. Spring, same thing. I just give it a little rub down. Firing pin, retaining pin, same thing. Just give it a little rub down. Now, I don't know about yours, but on mine, the firing pin retaining pin was very loose from the factory. So what I did is on one end, I took vice grips and just crimped it a little bit, and it created some little rough areas, and that helps the firing pin not back out. Okay, so I'll go ahead and reinstall the firing pin. For whatever reason, I find the spring likes to go in first. If you try and put the two in together, it's just it's a bit of a hard time. I put it in, and I make sure when I put it in, of course, that I line up that cutout part with the side where the firing pin retaining pin goes in. Line that up, get that in there. Then I usually use the back of my punch there just to hold it in place, push it all the way in as far as it goes. Grab that retaining pin, pop it through the hole. Yep, it's in there, nice and easy. Just check the function, make sure it's working good. Comes out good, then I'll just use my punch and set that down nice and tight in place. Good. Just want to come underneath and make sure that it's not protruding out of that little hole there, or it could interfere with the action. We're good. Okay, so slide's done, clean, firing pin's done, clean, reinstalled. So where do I lubricate this thing? Well, the first thing I do, I make sure I got a Q-tip, got whatever oil you use. What I do is I drop 3 drops of oil on both sides where the slide rides up in here. We'll go ahead and do that. Don't need much, just enough to help it move along. Move it around inside those grooves, both sides. And I like to just kind of give it a little rub around the top wherever there's friction areas. On the side here. And on the linkage here for your, take that off, release the hammer. You see the linkage moves there, right here? You can see there's some wear marks on there. So I like to give that a little bit of lubricant too. And then inside here where the slide moves and the slide return spring, I like to just give that some lubricant. I usually just run a bit of oil up the spring on the side too. All I do on the frame, I'm going to put the hammer back down, put my safety back on. And then with the slide, same thing. Inside here, there's those 2 little shoulders. I put a few drops of oil on the top of each one and then move it down underneath. And then I'll also run some on top of the housing where the firing pin is. Again, you don't need a whole lot. Just enough to give it a skim coat. Helps things move along. Less friction the better when you're running a firearm. I'm sure you know that. So there, up inside those little grooves on either side of the firing pin housing. Okay, now as far as I'm concerned, that is sufficiently oiled and ready to go back together. Now again, the reason I put my safety on is sometimes if you don't and the hammer's caught, because you need the hammer to be down to reinstall the slide. Sometimes you'll pull this down, accidentally hit the trigger, and that'll fly up. So just best off to have your safety on. So you pull down that trigger guard. Bring our slide all the way back and down. Okay, I'll dry fire just to decock the hammer. So that's the basic disassembly, field strip, clean, and lube that I do with my Norinco Olympia. Let's move on to the magazine. Now, the magazines here, you can take them apart. I wouldn't advise it. It's a royal pain in the ass. Yeah, I have another video reviewing it. You just don't want to take it apart if you don't have to. All I found that's really necessary is I grab my oily rag and I just give a good rub down on the follower, all around the external. Then I have this awl. I use my, you see this little hole here? I'm going to push down the follower beyond that hole, stick my awl through it to lock the follower down. Push down. There, just like that. Okay, see what I did there? And then that allows me to get a Q-tip down inside there and clean, you know, basically halfway. And that's usually all you really need. I'll grab a Q-tip, a little bit of solvent on there. And I'll just rub it down inside here. Especially on either side of these on the inside, because that is where the most buildup is. Get the solvent in there, hope it'll dislodge any of that carbon. And then basically just, you know, clean it out inside as best you can down to the follower. Try and get as much surface clean and rubbed as you can. And really see how much crap is in there. And I only put 40 rounds through this since I cleaned it last. Good old Blazer ammunition. It's cheap, but it's dirty. I'll use the other side of the Q-tip to kind of dry it out. Still looking pretty filthy. Grab myself another Q-tip. Now, I only clean out my magazine maybe every 200 or 300 rounds. I've never had an issue with them sticking, probably because I do maintain them quite well. Yeah, I did try taking these apart when I first got them just because I'm curious like that, and I so regretted it. It was a royal pain in the ass to take apart. Norinco, I mean, it's cheap Chinese stuff and you get what you pay for. I'm surprised this firearm has actually lasted as long as it has with the amount of rounds I got through it. But I have no regrets, other than, like I say, I will not take this magazine apart again in full unless I absolutely have to. So there, you can see the Q-tip's pretty much clean now. I just kind of hold that button, take out the awl, ride the follower up. I just don't like it flying up on itself. Then I simply grab a clean dry rag, rub down the follower, rub down the outside, and that's it. A Norinco Olympia 22 LR pistol, clean, lubed, magazine cleaned, ready for the range. Double check, make sure it's unloaded. You can see it's unloaded, of course, we knew it was. Dry fire it. Okay guys, that's my video. Hope it helps you out. Peace out, have fun, be safe, cause no harm. Get out to the range. It's going to be snowing up here in the north soon. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, share the video. Have a good one.